Hello, hello, hello. Eric Graham here. Okay, so today is a special day, but you would never learn this on MSNBC or CNN. You would never be taught this in your high school history class. And most of what you were taught in high school is was bullshit, a lot of propaganda, and it leaves you quite ignorant to the understanding of the U.S. and the U.S.'s interference and negative interactions with other countries in the world. Today is the 140th birthday of Smedley Butler. He was the most decorated Marine in U.S. history at the time. He received, he was the only person in U.S. history received something called the U.S. Marine Corps Brevet Medal, and also two-time Medal of Honor recipient. Why am I speaking about him? Well, he ended up being what you would call in today's terms a whistleblower. And he wrote the book after he retired in 1931. He wrote the book "War is a Racket." Now, I've written a quote here from the book, so I'm just going to read this quote. Excuse me. He said about himself that he was well, first he said about himself that he was a high class, quote, he was a high class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer for capitalism. Okay, so he served in Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Haiti. As I said, at the time of his death, he was the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. So after he retired and he thought about things, he became a whistleblower. He came to some conclusions. And what I say is, he was a brave man in military uniform, but more importantly, he was a brave man in civilian clothes as well. And so, quote from his book, War is a Racket. In the World War, a mere handful garnered the profits of the conflict. At least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in the United States during the World War. How many of these war millionaires shouldered a rifle? The general public shoulders the bill. And what is this bill? Newly placed gravestones, mangled bodies, shattered minds. Now that I see the international war, now that I see the international war clouds gathering as they are today, I must face it and speak out. End quote. So today is his birthday, the whistleblower, the War is a Racket book, brave man. So I just wanted to give a quick recognition for Smedley Butler and his bravery on his 140th birthday. And now turning to the day's headlines that you see. And when I had Progressive News Magazine, I did write an article called uh, Pentagon Hit List. So the Pentagon Hit List, I did quote some. I did quote from General Wesley Clark. Um, excuse me, that I'm pulling up now. So General Wesley Clark, he's another, American hero, a whistleblower um, that revealed that the United States, had, a pre-planned, list of countries that it wanted to invade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld, and and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
And this is where we are today. They're provoking war with Iran. He just said Iran, and Lebanon. He said that, right? Let me just go back to here because this is playing out, right now.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Okay, so, breaking news, today, Israel has fired missiles on Beirut in Lebanon, okay? And so this is what they're doing. They're provoking war with Iran because it's, going along with the Pentagon hit list, as you see right there, that I wrote about on progressivenewsmagazine.com that exists no more. So Genocide Joe, he's, playing along. The U.S. Never peace. The U.S. loves war. It's an economy of death. They need the war. The Pentagon always, people go to work every day, and their job is to, promote war and, make hostility and bad relations with other countries. And the military-industrial complex is glad to, provide both sides of conflicts with the weapons as profit for the United States. And so the economy of death, meaning that the United States and the manufacturing of weapons, the Congress, they set it up, the military industrial complex, the corporations that manufacture the weapons like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. In each state, if you're going to make an airplane, you have parts made in different states so that each state is depending a lot on for its income, for its state economy to profit from the manufacturing of weapons. So it's built into the system that you have this need for conflict in order to generate the profits that the Wall Street banks demand. And remember, the politicians get their kickbacks with the donations from the military industrial complex corporation. So there's your legalized bribery. So what they're doing now is provoking war with Iran and Lebanon. As I just said, the breaking news: Israel is striking against Lebanon, which is Hezbollah, which is really stupid. Israel knows that they haven't even beaten Hamas. They have not, fulfilled their so-called goals of destroying Hamas, which is never going to happen. So they're already losing in Palestine against Hamas. They're able to kill a lot of, this 200,000 that they've already killed, including, a lot of women and children, innocent civilians. They do that by dropping, big, 500-pound bombs, 1,000-pound bombs, 2,000-pound United States-made bombs. on camps, on refugee camps, and in densely populated areas, hospitals. You know, the hospitals has been a big target. So they've been successful. Israel has been successful at killing children, violating international law, and killing a lot of innocent civilians. But in terms of the military battle with the against Hamas and the soldiers, they're losing. Uh, they're losing that, and so to take on Hezbollah in Lebanon is ridiculous. So why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because uh, AIPAC, right? They're owned and controlled by AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee, and because Netanyahu, he knows that the U.S. will be forced to get involved when Hezbollah starts to beat Israel really bad, and then Israel is being attacked. Then, Lloyd Austin, the big oaf. I spoke about him in my last video. He's going to easily be pulled into this war against Iran because it's what the deep state wants, and because he's not intelligent or brave enough to put up any resistance. So this is this is only good for Netanyahu. Iran doesn't want this. The United States doesn't want this. This is only good for Netanyahu. He's a corrupt, self-serving, piece of crap. He he should be in prison, in his own country in Israel. Milkowski, aka Netanyahu, the Polish. He went to high school in America, and so anyway, he's a Zionist whose family changed their name from Milkowski to Netanyahu to try to sound more indigenous to Palestine, but they're not. They're occupiers, and so he should be in prison because in his own country he's prosecuted for corruption charges. So this is all about maintaining, Netanyahu. For him, he wants to keep this war going. He wants to drag the United States into this war because he knows that he cannot defeat Hezbollah in Lebanon. So, and Genocide Joe, he's a Zionist. He's been paid over $11 million by AIPAC during his long corrupt career. And speaking of Genocide Joe, the Cost of War project that's done by Brown University, they recently released that U.S. ground forces are engaged in combat in 9 different countries with airstrikes, U.S. airstrikes in 5 different countries under Joe Biden, which does not include Ukraine or Israel. So Genocide Joe, he loves war, and he's a Zionist. And, Israel, they did this attack in Beirut in Lebanon, and it involves retaliation or something for an attack that happened in the Golan Heights. So the Golan Heights is part of Syria, but Israel is always they built an illegal settlement there that they named the Trump Heights. And they put an illegal settlement, which they do regularly, violating United Nations law. The illegal settlements that are in violation of international law, United Nations rulings. And now, there's a lot of protests that happened. The media won't tell you about that, all the protesters. The young people are protesting against this genocide. the young people, the youth are not having it. And so, these people were, they came to protest the Netanyahu's speech in front of Congress. And, Israel does have nuclear weapons, so this is a problem, the threat of nuclear war because of
my main thing of being here is that my people are dying, my family members have perished,
We are here as people to draw a red line as Biden crossed his supposed red line, and
So yeah, the threat of nuclear weapons being used by Israel. And Netanyahu, he made the claim that the protesters that you see here, all these young people, he made the claim that they were being funded by Iran. He called them useful idiots and said that they're being funded by Iran. And these people, these young people, they're seeing babies being killed, amputations with no anesthesia, starving people. And, just as a side note there, as I stated, that Israel is an occupying force. And, well, yeah, I'll get to that later because, we're going to speak about that. I'll speak about that soon later. Israel is an occupying force. So, under international law, an occupying force has certain obligations. And recently, Israel started giving their soldiers polio vaccines, but they're not giving them to the Palestinians. And so, because there's open sewage because Israel destroyed all of the infrastructure. These people don't have bathrooms, so they're getting by, and so you're going to have diseases that are starting to spread, and you have starvation. So that leaves people vulnerable to diseases because their lack of nutrition. So it's not normal, and so Congress they applauded Netanyahu constantly when he appeared before them. It's not normal. Is it normal? No, it's not normal for Congress to uh, applaud a war criminal. So he's a person that should be in prison. He's a corrupt person in his own country. He's at risk of going
Members
to
of
prison.
Congress, Prime Minister of Israel.
Under normal circumstances, Netanyahu, he's in prison. He's on the verge of going to prison because of corruption charges that he faces. Sorry about that. And so, it's not normal for them to be applauding a war criminal, but they're doing it because, as I spoke about, they're afraid of AIPAC. If you speak about Israel, then many politicians have lost their jobs. Recently, even is it Jamal Bowman? They bragged that they spent a ridiculous amount of money. I don't remember how much it was, but AIPAC spent money to have him replaced, and so all the politicians, they're on the take. They've been bought and paid for by AIPAC, and they're afraid that they will lose an election if it's funded by an opponent. If an opponent is funded by AIPAC, because they want you replaced because you didn't fully cooperate with anything that Israel wanted you to say or do, or the way they wanted you to vote on a particular issue at that time. And so, yeah, so this is not normal.
Members of Congress, Prime Minister of Israel.
Thank you, America.
So all of that applause for Netanyahu, it's not normal, and only Israel gets to do. There's always these exceptions for Israel. Israel at the Olympics, the athletes, they're not supposed to talk about political issues and such things, but the Israeli athletes, they've been speaking highly about the Israeli army and IDF soldiers, and just violating the standard norms and regulations that the athletes are not supposed to do. Only Israel gets to kill children, and there's actually even been recent evidence showing that there's been actual Israeli snipers. During the March of Great Return, when the Palestinians tried to come back peacefully, as they have a right to do, to reclaim their homes, Israeli snipers would intentionally shoot young people in the kneecaps in order to cripple them for life. And then, when the ambulance paramedics come over,
Israeli citizens are rioting in the streets.
Help them, I'm sorry. Then they would shoot the medical workers. It's called a double tap. When they kill the medical workers that come over to help the injured. And rape also now, rape, I'm going to turn to this, rape and abuse of Palestinian prisoners. There's a big, breaking news story. This is the Owen Jones show. He's a good guy. I'm just going to play you something here. So what's happening is, I'm sorry, one second. What's happening is that,
Thinking to start cutting carbs. I need to drop my belly fat.
Sorry about that, one second.
If you want to drop this, start eating more of these.
ואני יוצא מפה, ואני לא הולך להצביע יותר על שום דבר, עד שהסיפור הזה והטרלול הזה, שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה, לא נגמר. אוקיי? ואני מאוד מבקש, ואני חושב שחבריי בקואליציה טוב יעשו, אם יעשו כמוני. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל. להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי? כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל, הכל, זה מה שרציתי. הכל, האנשים האלה, אתה יודע מה עשו? אוקיי. מנו, טוב.
So you see that right there.
צריך להפסיק אותו, ואני חושב שצריך לתת דוגמה אישית, ואני אומר עכשיו.
So right now, there's a big controversy, and this is recent from today, I believe. So, 9 Israeli soldiers have been arrested because the abuse of Palestinian prisoners is awful. And the hostages that were taken by the Palestinians that were released, some of them even look like they gained weight. They're happy, they're healthy. They praised the treatment that they received, as opposed to the images of Palestinians that are released from Israel. And so, there have been sexual abuse, beatings, rapes. So right now, these 9 Israeli soldiers are being investigated, and so the military, the right wing citizens, the military, they're trying to. They actually broke into the base and they're protesting the investigation. They don't care about the way that the Palestinians are treated. They don't care about them getting raped. Um, so, and actually, so Israeli government officials are actually proposing that the Israeli soldiers have a right to rape Palestinian prisoners. And this is about psychology. This is sick. This is an Israeli society that has been socialized to be evil, violent. They tried to create a veneer, a false surface that appears to be a progressive, welcoming society, but in fact uh, it's the apartheid state. It's a concentration camp. Uh, no one in Israel wants diplomacy. They only want more. It's always more killing, more killing. It's an extermination going on, worse than a genocide. But now, so there's a prisoner that Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, said was unable to walk due to the serious wound in his rectum area. That prisoner has been transferred from this is the SDE Timon prison. It's similar to Guantanamo Bay, just a place for torture and terrible treatment. Jacobin, in an article in Jacobin by Siraj Asi, the Israeli Knesset is in summer recess, but is holding an emergency discussion tomorrow to defend the detained soldiers, to defend these soldiers that are under investigation. Some, Smotrich, Israel's finance minister, called them heroic warriors. The national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, called them our best heroes. And the Likud, the ruling party, came out with a statement saying that it's legitimate for Israel soldiers to rape Palestinian prisoners. So this is, breaking news that there's been as far as, there's been, people that have been, and so what you see there, let me just play that back.
עכשיו אני קורא לחברי הקואליציה לעשות כמוני, אני קם ואני יוצא מפה ואני לא הולך להצביע יותר על שום דבר עד שהסיפור הזה והטרלול הזה שיש מי שבפרקליטות חושב שאפשר לבוא ולעצור חיילים על דברים שעושים למחבלי נוח'בה לא נגמר. אוקיי? ואני מאוד מבקש ואני חושב שחברי בקואליציה טוב יעשו אם יעשו כמוני. אנחנו לא יכולים להמשיך כרגיל
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל! הכל!
זה מה שעצור.
Yes, everything is legitimate. So he's outraged that how dare you investigate or call into question our soldiers that are beating and raping, sexually abusing Palestinian prisoners, because they're just animals. These people are socialized. Every Israeli citizen has to joins the military, has to serve in the military. And they're all put through a socialization process. to make them racist, to make them feel superior. The Talmud is a book that they are taught from. It's even, just on the level of the Bible, but, to them, the Talmud, it teaches them that, Palestinians and non-white Jewish people are, like animals, and so they can be treated that way. And so what you're seeing here is, the person who's involved in investigating these soldiers is saying, even if they stick a stick up someone's rectum, that's okay. And this guy, he's saying, yeah, it's okay. Because like I said, they treat them like animals. And so what's been involved here is the Palestinian prisoners. They've been beaten with clubs. They've been bound, blindfolded. They've had metal rods put into their butts, like sodomized with metal electric rods, electrocuted, attacked with dogs, beaten with pistols into their butts. This is some of this information from UNRWA, UNRWA. I forget the exact title of it, but there's the Aid to Palestinians organization. And now also, there's been assassinations of children, meaning that children are being sniped, snipers shooting children being found shot in the head and in the heart. That does not just happen. And being bound, having your hands bound for so long that you end up having to have an amputation, sleep deprivation, a 27-year-old. This is from Khaled Mahajna, an ex-detainee's rights lawyer. A 27-year-old that was raped, forced to sleep on his stomach, attacked by police dogs, raped with a fire extinguisher tube, insulted into his butt, end quote. And the extinguisher was activated to release its contents into his body. I have a quote from Lieutenant Colonel, retired Karen Kwiatkowski. She was doing an interview with Judge Napolitano. She said, just on a side note, she has zero respect. She has zero respect for the U.S. Congress, who invited Netanyahu to speak. And she said that they were, with their standing ovations, they were, quote, cheering the murder of children and lying about it, unquote. So this is, breaking, right now, this investigations into the rape and the treatment of the Palestinian prisoners. And, as I said, the contradiction is glaring, the contradiction between the way that the Palestinians treated the hostages that they had and the way that the Israelis treat the Palestinian prisoners. Israel, they regularly make arbitrary arrests with no charges. They have children in their prisons. Now,
shaking and visibly in shock.
There's
betraying
no
suffering the
justification
mind
for this.
cannot fathom.
They put a prod in our mouth and private parts and electrocuted us.
Such harrowing scenes repeat in hospitals every time Israel releases Palestinians taken from Gaza during this brutal war. Documented cases of torture and sexual abuse of Palestinians Palestinian detainees have reached unprecedented levels. And human rights organizations say Israel is carrying out enforced disappearances of thousands in Gaza. Men, women, children, and elderly. People from all walks of life. Like Iyad, who worked in a supermarket in Beit Hanun in northern Gaza before the war.
The soldiers took shifts beating us.
Yeah, it's like Guantanamo Bay. Torture, electrocution, prison, they were keeping them naked, blindfolded, naked. These are violations of international law. These are war crimes. And the corporate media, of course, you'll never see them telling you about this. CNN, MSNBC. It's just ridiculous. There's no justification for this, which is what the U.S. corporate media always do, is they use the military attack that Hamas made on October 7th. They always go back to October 7th. This has been going on since the Nakba in 1947, when they originally, established, the state of Israel. I think it was 700,000 displaced and murdered Palestinians. And then 1967. But, this has been going on for a long time, this slow moving genocide. But they always use October 7th as a justification. October 7th, it was a military operation carried out by an occupied people. The Palestinians are occupied people. Israel is an occupying force. Now, under international law, an occupied people do have a right to defend themselves and to fight back, but an occupying force does not have a right to self-defense because they are an occupier. And the ICJ rulings have found that these illegal settlements that Israel has built in the West Bank, Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, they're violating United Nations rulings, and so they're all deemed illegal and they have to be vacated.
Asked for water, they'd shove sand in our mouths. I was tied and blindfolded the whole time. I didn't know who was next to
Supermarket in Beit Hanun in northern Gaza before the war.
The soldiers took shifts beating us. We'd ask for water, they'd shove sand in our mouths. I was tied and blindfolded the whole time. I didn't know who was next to me.
Iyad disappeared for 75 days, taken from one undisclosed camp to another.
At one point, they told us to kiss the Israeli flag and then beat us before we could.
During that time, his wife Subhiyya didn't know if he was dead or alive.
He came out a different man, physically and emotionally.
Shortly after her husband returned, Subhiyya's 17-year-old son Jihad disappeared.
I hope he's detained. I know what goes on there, but at least he'd be alive. He can recover. We asked the Red Cross, but they tell us they have no information.
Israel has refused the Red Cross access to Palestinian detainees. Isa was released in May after 22 years in an Israeli prison. The last 7 months were worse than all those years combined, he tells me.
We're starved and beaten, stripped of everything. I lost nearly half my weight in those months. My father didn't recognize me. I was shocked when I finally saw myself in the mirror at home.
There were some captives from Gaza in the prison where Isa was held. We heard their cries, he says. He also heard the last words of Thaer Abu Asab, who was beaten to death by Israeli guards.
Tahir called out for his mom. We listened helplessly. I'm free now, but I almost feel guilty I survived.
Sheltering in Gaza's sea of tents, thousands of families permanently changed by loss, grief, and the torment of not knowing.
My son Jihad comes to me in my dreams. In them we cry together.
After losing everything, Subhiyya and thousands of mothers in Gaza have nothing but hope to hold on to, for closure, in the form of a reunion or even a marked grave. Noor Audi, Al Jazeera, Palestine.
And the Democrats, their hypocrisy, they're always crying about how they stand up for women's rights, because of abortion, my body, my choice. But it's hypocrisy. Look at these women, the way that they're living. You can't give birth in a situation like that, so it's hypocrisy, and even with and remember, just for the YouTube censors, my background, I'm a biracial, from a diverse background. My mother is a white American Jew, my father a black Christian. So this is not anti-Semitism or racism. This is facts. The way that they're conducting this, there's no justification for any of this. The way that these people are, being treated, the Democrats, they're hypocrites. They don't sincerely care about women's rights. If they did, they would be concerned about these women and what they're dealing with, and the way that this is going to affect childbirth and how many children have been killed. And so, it's just the hypocrisy of the Democrats.
I almost feel guilty I survived.
By the way, my body, my choice, but it was not that way with the vaccine, right? You would lose your job, you couldn't travel, so you did not have choice with your body. So that's hypocrisy. My body, my choice, that the Democrats always say concerning, only for abortion, but not for, anyway, and on this note, that the Democrats, they're, Kamala Harris, there's a book by Caleb Maupin, and it was on sale at Amazon, but it's now been banned. It's no longer available. And then I think on Hulu. Anyway, this is what the Democrats do. They do censorship. They're like authoritarian fascists under the guise of progressive left wing, caring about gender, transgender, gay rights and women's rights. But they're authoritarian fascists that can't defend their policies, won't debate policies, so they resort to censorship. And the book about Kamala Harris has now been banned by Amazon and other outlets. So it's obviously, that came down from the White House or the deep state. They don't want this information about Kamala Harris coming out because she's been anointed as the
Sheltering in Gaza's sea of tents, thousands of families permanently changed by loss, grief, and the torment of not knowing.
My son Jahed comes to me in my dream.
The new spokesperson figurehead, she's going to cooperate with the deep state, and so she's been anointed to replace Biden. And the Democrats, they're so desperate to hold on to power. That's why they tried to assassinate Trump and get him out of the way. And then, maybe Biden would have ran for president again and been able to win once they got Trump out of the way. But they failed. They just missed. So now, because Biden was going to lose to Trump, and Trump is still alive, so now they have to replace Biden, and they're desperate. And they're going for Kamala Harris, and she's repulsive and no one likes her. But, cackling Kamala, she's non-white. She's, a female, Indian, black. At first she was an Indian, but, now she's black. But anyway, so, the book about her has been banned because of the censorship by the Democrats. So I'm going to close with this. I just want to see the end here, just to.
In them we cry together.
After losing everything, Subhiyya and thousands of mothers in Gaza have nothing but hope to hold on to, for closure, in the form of a reunion or even a marked grave. Noorodi, Al Jazeera, Palestine.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel
All
to get the
right,
latest
peace
news
out.
from out.
Until the next time, please hit that like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be notified next time when I drop a video. And I'll be looking for support. I'll be hopefully putting a Patreon link, and I want to network with other shows and do interviews. Thank you.